The first 2 years that I was at the school, I was given what is called a scope and sequence. It's not a regular curriculum, it's just, this is a list of what you're supposed to do every single quarter. And I gave the students the scope and sequence, I used the textbook, and I gave them what it was that they needed. And on average, it was only between 70 to 75% that would achieve what we call the level 3 or level 4. Level 3 means you meet the grade standards, level 4 means you exceed it. So after those 2 years, I kind of got tired of just the 70s. And I decided, hey, what if I changed the curriculum, not to take out any information that they're supposed to learn, but included their stories that for whatever reason were not in the textbook. What I found was not only regardless of their income, their special education status, their reading levels, I was able to get between 92 and 94% of students achieving either a level 3 or a level 4 on their end of year social studies examinations. All I did was give their stories a chance to be heard. For example, if we spoke about Christopher Columbus, we know that we have in the US on the 10th of October, usually we have a celebration where we have the day off, we have sales and everything. But if in this same class, I have Latino students who were adversely affected by Columbus exploring, we talk about the languages that may have been learned had Columbus not explored. We talk about what the government system was like, the foods that were available, the art, the literature that was burned instead of being disseminated throughout. If we talk about Lincoln, of course we talk about the Emancipation Proclamation, but we also talk about the letters that he wrote that said, you know, they aren't our equals. We can't maintain slavery, but this is how I feel. And how that changes how we speak about certain heroes. Should they be lionized or should they be villainized for what it is that they truly believe? And what I discovered was that not only did the students do better, they felt differently about themselves because they were finally able to see themselves in the stories. And then I was able to get the parents to participate. And if you know anything about middle school parents, they love their children, but they don't always like their children. So they're not always willing to participate in class or in homework. I was able to get parents in the building. I was able to get them to participate in history fairs and to even participate in doing the homework. And what I also noticed was that after they graduated from 8th grade, went into high school and eventually college, I still get emails and calls back on how they're somewhat having little arguments with their teachers on what they're being told in their history courses versus what they also know, or being able to debate the rationale for a teacher saying something about U.S. history that we usually always accepted. So it's not a changing of history at all. They know the dates, they know the people, they know the places, but it's a more holistic inclusion of everybody. If the United States is supposed to be a salad or a melting pot, we can't continue to have just one story. And I would submit that whether it's Arizona or Texas who's trying to change, saying, you know, the KKK is, you know, one of the most wonderful organizations, or making slavery sound more palatable, the rationale for that is not to let minorities know what it's like, because they already know. I think it's changing how those who are in the majority think about their position in the majority. And then if you can finally get people to understand, you know, well, maybe it isn't the way we've been told, then we can get some equity. And it's not like changing of who has the most money or the least money, but just an understanding of how we need to be in the world and in our country. And I think hopefully, if it can be done in my class, it can be replicated elsewhere. Thank you.
Okay, with that, I'll invite our two other speakers to come up to the front, and then if you have any questions, we have now an open dialogue with our speakers. Whoever's comfortable with this reading. There you go. There you go, sir.
So can you describe some of the materials that you gave to students to provide them with multiple perspectives? Were they like primary source materials or secondary? Or?
Yeah, it was a combination. I would use some primary sources. When I was at Duke University, I worked at the Special Collections Library, and that had a bunch of primary documents. So there were some things that I would get from there and photocopy and give it to students. I also use Henry Lowen's book, Lies My Teacher Told Me, and stuff from Howard Zinn, because he was my idol, rest in peace. And I would also get their parents and their family members, if they were from Dominican Republic or Puerto Rico or Senegal or wherever, I would get them to give me information about their family. Like what were you told that doesn't occur in our textbook? Like what is your guttural reaction to certain things? What are stories that were told to you as you were growing up? And those I would incorporate in it as well. But what I would do is I always had like a enduring understanding question, and it was mainly, okay, if we're told that California or Texas was annexed, that's passive terminology. What are we not being told when you say annexed? Because when we look at the definition, it's you're ceding over something, but it's not willingly. Why aren't we told they didn't want to give it over? And now we're having an argument about immigration, about what used to be Mexico, and now they can't come in, but that used to be their territory. And just conversations like that, again, not refuting anything that's in the textbook, but just, okay, where are the holes, where are the gaps, and why do we have those gaps?
So what I think is interesting is that it's a broadening of their understanding of history, but it's also an understanding of the way that people are educated. So
Exactly.
It's both.
And it makes it easier for me to bring in more worldwide perspectives, so that we don't get into the idea that, okay, we live in New York and that's all that matters, or we live in the United States and that's all that matters, because all of this is going on all over the world, and they're better able to situate themselves as global citizens instead of American citizens only.
What would a typical assignment be? So would it include writing? Would it include research?
Of course. Well, okay, so we, one of their last assignments I gave them dealt with pharmaceuticals, of all things. And that came from the Prohibition era. And one wouldn't seem to see the connection between the two. But we talked about what was the drug of that age. And for their motivation, I used a song from KRS-One that was a rap song, and a bunch of them are into rap. And it dealt with who used to be the drug dealers during Prohibition. When we discussed Prohibition, I then had them go home and, of all things, watch TV for an hour. And they had to write down 10 medicines that they saw and what were the 10 diseases that they were supposed to cure. But then they also had to pay attention to the side effects. And then they had to watch some more TV to find out what medicines cured the so-called side effects. And then we spoke about, like, what's the rationale between why Ritalin, which has the same chemical combination as cocaine, is legal, but marijuana isn't. Where is marijuana grown? What does marijuana do versus Ritalin, versus Demerol, versus all these other things? And then we discussed just the global idea of big pharma and how no matter what, like, money is continually made with that, and then we're continuing to imprison people for a dime bag.
Question to you. As I know that action is kind of a cyclist action, but I'm not so clear because you stop at the reflection. The best of my knowledge, reflection is not only standalone, has to be connected with other factors, for example, the action, the observation, and the plan as well. So what's
Actually,
your explanation about?
yeah, in the process of doing classroom action research, we have